If you've dreamed of having a massive passive income but didn't know how to get there, listen to the Massive Passive Show. You'll hear top investors and experts share how to tap into the incredible opportunities that Houston offers real estate investors. A favorable business climate, low cost of housing, and that Texas wildcatter mentality are just some of the reasons that the top investors nationwide are flocking to Texas. The Massive Passive Show starts now.
Good. Okay, am I ready?
Yes, you're alive.
That music kind of throws me off. This is Pat Reisinger. Good morning, Houston. You know, this is a great morning to be alive, like every morning when I wake up. You know, everybody says, what kind of day is this? And I said, today is great. You know, it can be raining. It can be 5 foot of snow on the ground. It can be all these things, but it's still a good day if you wake up alive. And so far, me and Ray and Hal are alive, and that's a very good thing. Anyway, our show is Massive Passive, and our website is massivepassiveshow.com. And we talk real estate. We talk, rehabs. We talk about wholesaling. We talk about all aspects of real estate if you're an investor. I mean, this is an investor show, but if you're a homeowner and you're listening to our show, that's great too, because we're going to talk about things that are important to you that you'll need to know so you don't get, messed over by some contractor that tells you something that's not true. And so that's, we encourage everybody to listen to our show and go and check out our podcast and the things that we do. But this morning, I'd like to introduce F.A. Grande, which is our head honcho, and that's Ray Sasser. And Ray is a great guy. Matter of fact, Ray, he always says I embarrass him, but, Ray is the kind of guy that gets you to be a better version of yourself. He's been doing this, since 1982, and he's been the president of the Real Estate Investment Club of Houston and some other organizations, and has done some very good charitable work. And he's really good at getting people to be their best version. Anyway, Ray, why don't you talk for a few minutes?
Thanks, Pat. Hey, and of course we got Hal on the running the technology for us. Without him, we couldn't do any of this. So thank you, Hal, for having our back. And James not with us today. So Hal, if you get want to try to get a word in edgewise between me and Pat, go for it. Good luck.
Well,
I don't know what your odds are.
First of all, we're going to talk about Hal just another minute or two. Listen, y'all, this is Hal Daly is the owner of Bio City Tech. He has a partner, and his partner seldom around as much as he is anymore because he's been going to college to be, like a chemical engineer or something, Hal?
Yeah, chemical engineering.
Yeah, chemical engineering, but Chad Ladner was the first person I met with Bio City Tech, and he would come over to our house and he would answer our questions about problems we were having on the computer and things that I was doing when I was had my business, which I still own, which is residential rehab consulting, and I run projects for clients and mentor clients. And of course, Ray and I hooked up, and Ray and I have kind of been hooked up off and on for the last 10 years. And but Ray asked me to be a part of this Massive Passive and the show, and we make a great team. I mean, the cool thing about it is we're both kind of old grizzled veterans, and we've had our.
Does that mean I have missing teeth?
Well, yeah, you will if you live long enough. Ray's always kidding me about, being older than him. But, the thing about being older, I'm still breathing. He's still got about 6 or 7 years just to catch up to me. So he may not be breathing.
Pat, I watch you, and I've never seen anybody your age do as much as you do. I mean, yeah. And to me, what I admire the most about you is that you just keep moving. You keep challenging yourself. You keep getting in projects, and it's a pleasure to be around you because that's, to me, the people that got that inner drive, they're fun to be with. And I don't care what they do. I don't care if it's real estate, if it's tiddlywinks. It doesn't matter to me. It's just that inner drive. They're always in the middle of something. They always got good input on no matter what you're doing because they're just curious. And I just love being around smart and curious people. And I think that's what we do with the RIA, isn't it? I mean, we basically try to form a community of like-minded people who are high energy, who want more than what life handed them, and they want to be successful. So I just love working with you. It's a great pleasure. Even if sometimes you're wrong and you disagree with me, it's still a pleasure to work with you.
Well, the thing about it is, Ray, the cool thing about, our relationship is it's really a healthy relationship because, we can disagree with each other. We don't get angry. We don't throw down a fit and say, screw you, I don't want to talk to you anymore. We realize that, we're two individual people. 95% of the time, you and I are on the same page. I mean, to give y'all an example about Ray and I is that, we have two Facebook platforms that we use. It's Massive Passive Deal Makers, and we have the Texas Real Estate Investor Community. And the investor community is a public Facebook that Ray created, and Ray and Sharon Fernandez. And that gets people from really basically all over the world. They're supposed to be talking about Texas real estate, but no one adheres to our rules. I mean, we have to Ray kicks, blocks about 10 spammers a day on there, and we've got like almost 18,000 plus people on that. Yep. That thing's growing by 1,000 people a week. So that kind of give you an idea. I mean, how many people in Houston, actually our Texas joins that. We have to block them from Nigeria and Iran and all these other places. And they're talking about doing real estate in Texas. Well, good and well they're not doing real estate in Texas, because how can they talk to people from Iran and have some kind of rapport with selling their house in Houston? It just doesn't make any sense.
It's a wild, wild west, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Ray's always blocking them. And matter of fact, I made a comment to a guy. He was in Maryland, and he was made this blanket thing about buying houses or doing houses in Texas, and he's in Maryland. And I said, how can you do deals in Texas when you live in Maryland? I mean, what kind of relationship are you going to have with people in Texas? And then, of course, and Ray kind of chimes in, and we're both like jumping on this rear. And it's really pretty cool, because the whole idea that Ray started this thing, and I got on board with him 6 months ago, and we'd already been friends for like 10 years, and we had done other projects with the Real Estate Investment Club of Houston and some other stuff that Ray had going on that I kind of joined in with him. And the thing about it is we think alike, and that's what you want to do. That's the reason that you want to be and join this RIA and start coming to these meetings on the second Saturday of every month, is that you get to hang around with like-minded people that, are interested in expanding and growing their financial success in the future by, in real estate, which is probably the safest way to invest money. I mean, much safer than the stock market. I mean, hell, look, the stock market fell 900 points yesterday. And
oh, wow.
So, if you're in the stock market and you're a little player, you took a big hit. But if you own like 10 rent houses, I mean, listen, always say, the only thing better than 3 rent houses is a working wife, But if you own those rent houses, you're going to have massive passive income. So in other words, when you get to be 65 and you have, 10 or 12 or 15 of these rental properties, or 20 or 30 or how many, you accumulate, is it no matter where you're at, vacation or whatever, when you check your bank account every month, it goes up, So that's why you want to get involved in this. If you're an engineer, or even if you're a letter carrier for the post office, you can get into this business. And I've seen lots of guys that were like, mail handlers and stuff that were at the low end of the totem pole down there at the post office, and they got into this business and became quite successful and very rich. So, it's just one bite at a time, and that's what we teach you in the RIAs, to start off and start learning the terminology, and start learning how to buy houses and how to rehab them. And so.
The cost of entry is not anything. In fact, I never let anybody have money stop them. If they can't afford a membership to Alamo RIA Houston, we comp them. I mean, it's just, to me, I don't, a few dollars don't matter to me. What matters to me is I am going to surround myself with energy, enthusiasm, belief in an outcome, and have fun. And I'm dedicated to that in my life, and that's what I want. And if you have that, then you need to come to our second Saturday morning meeting, get there early so you can have some of the tacos and just be a part of the community, because the community is going to grow. And the more people in that community, the more givers in that community, the more everybody prospers. And that's what you're talking about on Facebook. That's exactly what we do. We take the takers and we delete you. If you're a taker, don't get around me. Stay away from me, because I've never been around takers. I'm never going to be around takers, and I'll walk away from you. And if we're having a conversation, I'll walk away from you because you're a taker. You're not a giver. Well, you figure out how to give, and you will get for the rest of your life. It's just that simple.
Well, the cool thing about that, that I work, I'm not going to mention any names, but I work for one of the worst takers in the planet. And I tell you, you're exactly right, Ray. How many times do people call me or come pick my brain? And I'm a consultant. I make money consulting people, but I consult more for free than I get paid for. And it's because I'm like you, Ray. We realize that life is a circle, and everything that we do that's positive almost always comes back to us in a positive way. And I preach that all the time to our volunteers, to people I meet, is like, look, become a part of this. Don't be afraid to help somebody else, because by helping them, you help yourself. You become a better person, and you become a better investor, because if you're talking to other investors, that means that you're able to talk to people that you're buying their house from, and be there. Look, the whole idea about buying houses is learning to solve people's problems. And if you learn to be a problem solver, you'll be super successful. And that's basically what you learn by hanging around other investors in our area. Now, this has replaced a lot of y'all don't know this, but there used to be the Real Estate Investment Club of Houston, and it was a great organization. It started, about 36 years ago or so, Ray?
Yeah. Yep. I joined probably in 85 and 89. By 89, I went full time. I stopped working for the 60 to 80 hours for a large corporation. Loved that job, but I knew it wasn't where I wanted to end up. I knew that I wanted to have a little bit more control and destiny, and I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want to go through a shrinking corporate structure and never be in charge of anything. I mean, I never was going to be in charge of anything. I was never going to be in charge of my time. I never was going to be in charge of what I did the next week or the next month, or what I worked on or how I worked on it. And so I joined the Rich Club in about 85, quit in 89, went full time in 89, never went back. And I've led a charmed life in that regard. My wife works with us. My brother and sister quit their jobs because they were our partners. Our family members work with us, and 38 years later, we own lots of property, and we have a lot of discretionary control over our time. And I have no desire to retire, which I think is an achievement in its own. Just like when I look at you, Pat, you can't retire when you're doing what you want to do. You're out there. Some of the things you do those are the kinds of things I want to be doing. But if you're doing what you want to do, then why would you retire?
Well, Ray knows that, because yesterday I posted all these things I had to do, And Ray said, you're making me tired just from reading your list.
You saw that, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then several of my other friends said the same thing. He said, man, I got tired of looking at your chores,
I think I said, you're wearing me out.
Yeah. Well, Ray is a big deal. He walks every day. Matter of fact, I go to his house occasionally. We do this radio show a lot from his house, but the last couple of weeks, everybody's been kind of sick. So, we've been doing this show from my house, his house. And then, of course, James, when he's around, he's doing it from his house. And then Hal is at his house, and he plugs into the radio station, and we have this special equipment we bought that allows us to do this show. We could do this show in a Ray's car or my pickup truck, and so, I mean, it's really cool, the technology that Hal it can bring to the table. And that's why you need a guy like that. I mean, if you're in business, there's all kinds of things. You can't even think about the things that you'll need Hal for. And that's why you need to have him in your phone. And because when the old computer wolf comes to call and you got a problem, then you can pick up your phone. Hal's already in there. And I'm going to tell you one more thing about Hal, and then we're going to move on. Hal, I've known for like 16 or 17 years. I met Hal through Chad Ladner, his partner, when Chad got busy doing other stuff. He said, well, call my partner Hal. And I called Hal, and then Hal became our to-go-to guy. I mean, Hal's great. And Hal has saved our bacon so many times. And with things that we couldn't even think about until it happened. And I always say in this business, and Ray does too, you're as good as your toolkit. And that means your vendors. And Hal is a very, very important vendor. And I can't urge y'all enough to go to massivepassiveshow.com and click on our vendors, and it will ask you some information like your phone number, your email address. And that's for our database so that we can update you on other things that we have coming on, so you're not constantly having to go to our website. In other words, we got a bus tour coming up December the 4th. We got our general meetings. We have in our general meetings in Rio, we're going to have focus groups. And Ray, I'd like to let you talk about those for a minute, because those are very important aspects of investors learning to grow intellectually in this business.
The other thing we want to cover, we got quite a few questions out there. We're this kind of open format today. So if you want to call in, I'm not sure if we can take call-ins because we're operating remotely. We are live, but how are we able to take call-ins?
Yeah, technically we should be able to accept calls through the station.
Okay, you give that number, Hal?
I can never remember the call-in number. I'll have to look it up.
Well, we'll look it up.
Yeah.
But we do have several emails I did want to go over. I had a great meeting with a guy yesterday that's struggling to get started. And I'm not going to talk about him, but he brought up so many important issues that have the same problem over and over. And if we can overcome them, we can take those first steps. The question is, what are the first steps? So we got lots of email questions that we haven't been answering, and so we probably will try to answer them. One of the things you said today, Pat, that you were talking about, we're talking about community and relationships, and of course, Thanksgiving was day before yesterday, and usually that's those 2 days I sit around and try to hide and then I pretend to help Jen with the dishes, but just being around family and focusing on family. Thanksgiving may be the most important holiday of the year, just because it's an excuse for everybody to get together and see what's in other people's heads and your family, and just make sure you stay connected that once or twice a year. And with our RIAs, we've always had that kind of community where it's really an excuse to hang out with friends. And I remember, like, when I first really got going about 1990, I was out there I felt like such a loner. I was just out there doing my own thing. There was no real communities like there are now in the real estate investing game. And now those communities exist. And if they're done right, you can be around friends, you can grow, you can pick up a phone and say, hey, I got this problem, how to overcome it. And you'll be surprised when you're surrounded by people who do what you do or what you want to do, how often they know the answer before you even ask it. In fact, you're going to ask a question thinking that's your problem. And when that person's 10, 15 years ahead of you, he already knows you're asking the wrong question. And the guy that I met yesterday, it was such a pleasure to meet with him. And a lot of times people come and they'll think that they've got a certain paradigm in their head. They got a certain model, a certain way to solve that problem, and it's not working. And in Search of Excellence, they talk about paradigm shift, where you can't use the same solution to get yourself out of the problem that you got yourself into the problem. So you've got to see it differently. You got to look at it differently, and you got to see, hey, instead of me listening to what's not working with me, what worked for other people. And you've heard me say this, you'll probably hear it every time I do a public presentation, is if I don't take credit for being where I'm at, because it wasn't me, that the only thing I had was a burning sensation in my gut, what I've always done is reached out to the people that went before me. I watched what they did. I looked at people who were successful at what they were doing, who it looked to me like they were doing what I wanted to do. And I started emulating them. I started copying them. And so when I met with a guy yesterday, I'm really, really glad I got more out of the conversation than he did, because sometimes we get going 100 miles an hour and we forget the struggles that we had and we forget how we overcame them. And I'll give you some specifics without really talking about who he was or anything, but he had a couple ideas of, hey, I don't have the money to get started and I need this to do it. And it's like, that's one of the biggest fallacies there is. Money is almost never an issue. It's not the issue that's stopping you from getting going. What's really stopping you from getting going is you don't know the next step. You're taking the wrong first step, and maybe you never even taken the right step.
Well, and that has to do with a lot of fear, and fear always blocks us from thinking clearly,
Yeah, fear. We came up with an acronym called KALM, and basically KALM stands for knowledge, attitude, leads, and money. That's what you should be working on. You should be working on knowledge. If you're not working on specific knowledge to get what you want, you're not going to get there. It requires specific knowledge. You can't go work on the wrong problem and then get the outcome that you want. So you have to have that knowledge. You also have to have that attitude, and that attitude is what he did. And that's when somebody appears to have that attitude, they got my time, as much time as I afford to give them. But that attitude is, hey, I'm showing up. I'm ready to start, cranking that oar. I'm ready to start holding that end of the shovel. And when they got that right attitude, you can do anything with a person like that. And so, like, as I get older and I hire contractors and stuff, I'd rely more on attitude than I do on skill. Because skill won't make that person show up on time. Skill won't make that person stay late. Skill won't make that person have your back. Skill won't make him put your priorities above his so that he gets the job done. Attitude is 100 times more important to me than skill. And then the other thing, and then we talk about, in KALM, we also talk about the leads and the money. And we talk about like how to manage the leads, how to get the leads, what are important leads, what are the kind of leads you need to accomplish your exit strategy, what is it that you need to accomplish your financial freedom, and then money, how to get money. Money is very, very misunderstood, and it's not something you're going to wake up and understand tomorrow. And if you try to understand money on your own, it'll take you 10 to 15 years. If you hang out with people that already understand money, you'll have it down in a month or two. So money's a tricky thing, just like getting leads, getting the knowledge. But if you've got attitude, we can overcome those other three things.
Well, go ahead, Ray.
Well, I was excited to talk to him, and what I realized with him is that he needs to be focused, and he needs to show up. It's more than what I could do in a 30-minute conversation with him to get him on track. But he needs to go to 5 or 10 meetings. He needs to find out, hey, what is it that I'm missing here? Why is that important? Why should I believe them? What is it that the guys and ladies that are actually making this work, what is it that they're actually doing? And what is my next step? And it's not going to happen in a 30-minute conversation. Probably all a 30-minute conversation, just like this radio show, is to get you to understand the power of showing up. There's probably not a greater power in the universe.
I always say, Ray, this is the big deal. If you're ready, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to run you off. Not a thing. But if you're not ready,
the teacher will appear too.
That's right. If you're not ready, there's nothing I can say that's going to get you involved. Okay? So it's a two-edged sword. If you're not ready, then I can't get you ready. But if you're ready, you'll hear everything I've got to say and other people, and you'll start learning how to change your life. See, attitude is something people don't think about a lot. Attitude is really your unspoken belief system. And let me give you an example so the audience can understand what I'm talking about. everybody has been somewhere like in a group of people, and another person walked in the room, and the other person that walked in hasn't said a word, but everybody looks at each other and says, boy, he's got a crappy attitude. Now, he hadn't even opened his mouth. He hadn't even opened his mouth, but you can tell by his presence, the way he carries himself, the way he looks at other people, that he's got an attitude. And as soon as someone says something to him, he becomes an attacker, and people go, wow. Well, now that they've already formed the opinion about this person's attitude. So our attitude is our unspoken belief system. So what you have to do is learn to change your belief system. And the only say, if you want to be in this business, there's only one thing you have to change, and that's everything.
It's something something you're saying I think is really good about the attitude is like you run 1,000 projects. Typically, the guys that fail run 5 or 6 projects, and they run out of money, run out of business, run out of partners, because they don't have that extra thing that makes them push through. When you go through 1,000 projects, and somebody has never done a real project or done 2 or 3 projects, they literally need to bow at your feet because you've got that intangible. You've got that thing that doesn't let you take failure. And you move through it and you keep pushing and you keep pushing and you get that outcome. And when somebody's watching you, if they're a good student, they're not just going to see the information that you're giving them. They're also going to learn, like, what is this guy's attitude? Why does he talk this way? Why is he that bull in the china shop? Why does he get through to the other side? And when you surround yourself by people, you're learning the tangible things like how do I hire the contractor? What should be put in the contract? How do I qualify the contractor? All the things that deal with that. But then the next thing is, how does he deal with that? How does he overcome those things? What does he do when there's a problem? And so when you're around that and you see that, then you're learning about attitude. So it's knowledge. Knowledge writes the contract. Attitude gets the contract done.
Absolutely. And I tell you, if you're in this business and you're working with contractors, I always say working with contractors is daycare for adults. I mean, literally, but the thing about it is, once you become a good leader, then you motivate contractors, even guys that are borderline, becoming better. And if they become better, then you have someone that you can depend on every deal you do, because that person wants to please you and he knows what pleases you. And if it's caulking in baseboards or kitchen cabinets and all those little things that a lot of guys in this business that are contractors don't think about, but if they're teachable, you can teach them that. And then you have a lot more time on your hands to do other things because you don't have to babysit them. And so a lot of what you learn to do in this business is get other people that work with you to step up to the plate and be a better version of themselves. And that has to do with your attitude, how you walk on the job, how you talk to people, how you treat people. And if you learn to do that in the right way, you'll be super successful, because all those other things like buying houses and all that, you'll become better at that because you'll have a different attitude when you go speak to people, and they'll like you, they'll trust you, they'll believe in you, and because you believe in yourself.
When Justin kind of runs most of my jobs, and most of my conversation with Justin is not on the technical parts. That's so funny because it goes right into what you're saying. Because we typically have 4 or 5 rehabs going on at any given time, and with Justin, he's responsible for outcomes, and outcomes rely on our partners, our contractors, and getting contractors to trust us, to believe in us, to know that we've got their back. The fact that we're going to be loyal to them is 10 times more valuable to them than how many dollars they make on that job. I mean, and so like most of my conversations with Justin are not about, do we have the contract? Is the penalties in there? Do they understand what the scope of work is? It's not about that at all. It's like, how do we get these guys to give us 100%? And how do we get these guys to be 100%? Because a lot of times these contractors are married, they're going through family issues, they got other contractors that work for them that aren't showing up. They're dealing with maybe city bureaucracies that are difficult to work with. It's construction, and getting jobs done and getting these outcomes are so hard that it really is a people's business. And so I spend most of my time talking Justin just about how to deal with people, and not that he's wrong and I'm right. It's just that's a big part of our conversation to get these guys to be on our team and to be our partners and to get them to work with us. And sometimes that requires screaming, and sometimes it requires crying, and sometimes it requires loaning money, and it's all kinds of things. But it's a human situation.
Well, Ray, you're saying that, when you started in 1982, I was working as a general superintendent for a development company in downtown Houston and near town Houston, all over the Montrose, River Oaks, edge of downtown, the commercial, residential, and the development company also owned about, 75 rental properties in that area, which were fourplexes and duplexes and a few houses. And we're constantly have to work on those things. And the property management company, one time I was in her office and we were talking about some property issues that GSM had, and at the time I'm building an office project and 2 restaurants and all this other stuff, I got all this stuff on my plate. And she looks at me, she says, you're unbelievable. I said, well, why is that? And she said, you have the patience of Job. And I go, well, I found out a long time ago. I've been in construction, since I was like 16 years old. And I said, you have 2 choices. You can get angry and jump up and down, and all you're hurting is yourself, because everybody else looks at you and like, oh, what a nut, and like, what the hell, that guy's wacky,
and that's even, and they may have just broke that $500 item and they're looking at you like you're the nut, and that's exactly how they think.
That's exactly right. And I tell you what, that's the daycare for adult thing, right? So you have to learn to slow down and think before you speak. And believe me, I'm really good in construction, but I'm not very good with family members. And I got about half the family right now that's mad at me. They don't want to talk to me. And, hopefully that will blow over in the next, few months or whatever. And they'll see that, at the time I was just stressed out and whacked out, and I took it out on them and not. But, that's the thing. And when I'm in the field, you'll never see me discuss a person's problem with not doing their job right in front of other men. Always take them outside, and we go into a private place, even go sit in my truck and we'll have a little conversation. And believe me, if you handle those situations right, 9 times out of 10, you can get that contractor or that person that's doing your work on track, because then you go, I really want to work for Pat because he really treats me right. And that's a big part of being a manager is just like you do with me, Ray. You really know how to make me a better version of myself, because you've been through a lot of the things that I'm still going through at 72 years old. And because
we're never going to stop going through stuff.
You're never going to stop growing. That's the whole fact right there.
We can't always control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond to it.
Well, a lot of what we do, and y'all can tell, is that we try to bring the passion of this business to you. And we think that these things that we talk about are very basic, because we have to do them every day too. I mean, it's not something that you just learn and then it just comes automatic. A lot of it's automatic, but every now and then you got to stop and smell the roses, because you get going so fast that you're not thinking anymore. And that's why being a part of a group of people, the cool thing about AREA is that really people are there to run their business and become better. But I've got people that I've met in the last 15, 16 years in this real estate investment market that I was running jobs, but I ran a development company for 6 or 7 years. I built all this stuff and had all these connections, but it's not like dealing with the GP people, the general public, learning to do this. And in the 16 years I've been doing this with the general public, it's really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I just kind of took for granted, because before I was just running jobs with investors, a big investor with a couple of his investor friends, like bankers and stuff, and the people that work the jobs. And now I'm having to deal with lots of different personalities. But real quick, I'd like to say, if you do want to call in, we have about we had about 20 minutes left.
A little bit over, I think.
Okay. The phone number is 713-339-1070. It's 713-339-1070. And that's the number to 1070 AM. And they can connect you with us, and you can ask us a question, and we'll try to, not go down too many rabbit holes and answer for you.
Pat, let's hit some of these email questions. I do want to finish up with my meeting that I had with the guy yesterday, because I'm glad that he honored me and gave me time to talk about what he's doing, because it kind of, when you've been doing something for a long time, you kind of forget like what got you there. But the stuff that he's talked about, and since we've been involved in the RIAs for the last 12 to 15 years, we as leaders, we see that it's the same thing over and over. And like with our coaching students, it's kind of the same thing over and over. You gotta, the biggest question they want to know is, what do I do first? And in his case, it was like, we need to really, I was able to spend enough time with him. I kind of could dive down a little bit, and because he's got the right attitude, he just needs to start hanging out with the people that are doing what he wants to do. And the other thing is, we definitely want, and this is a question that comes up all the time anyway, is like, what do I do first? We definitely don't want you working on the wrong things first, because it's almost like, it's like in our lives, these windows open up in our lives, and we can crawl through those windows and get to the other side. And that window's going to start shutting pretty quick. It's not going to stay open forever. Things will change. That time that you had, that energy you had, that desire you had, is going to go. And you need to get through that window pretty quickly, and you need to start having some successes. And so just think about it, that you've got to get connected fast. You've got to go to some of the meetings. You've got to see what's really working, what's not working. There'll be people in that room, every one of those rooms, when in our RIA meetings, there's going to be people who are getting started. There's going to be people on their 5th deal. There's going to be people on their 500th deal, and they're all in that room, and they all have that same common, the camaraderie, I guess, that same brotherhood. They're in it because they want to get better and they want to hang out with people. And the guy that's done 300 deals, even picking up one or two ideas and thoughts are good for him, or he might be picking up opportunities, or he might be looking for ways to JV. The person that's done 10 or 20 deals, he might be looking for ways to get funding. And then that person that's just starting, he might say, well, what do I do first? And it's usually pretty simple if you can just talk to that person for 15 or 20 minutes to figure out what they should be doing first. And sometimes they're doing the right things. But I would say 4 out of 5 times, they're doing the wrong thing. And they just don't know it because they don't know what it takes to get to the other side. So I just wanted to finish that up. But here's some questions we had. We did have a question on a person having squatters. We own a lot of rental properties, so we've had to deal with squatters. And also squatters are, well, first of all, squatter is a person that moves into a house pretty much without permission, or they end up in the house and you can't get them out. And so that's a squatter. If you're a home buyer, that's an opportunity if you know how to solve the squatter issue. And because a lot of people end up with squatters in their houses, they go to an attorney, not the attorneys we recommend, but they'll go to attorneys, and the attorney who isn't an expert at evictions ends up charging those people $5,000 or $10,000. And the people just can't afford it. So they're stuck with a house with a squatter in it. Next thing you know, they're picking up the phone and saying, hey, will you buy my house? So as an investor, you've got to learn how to deal with squatters. If you're a landlord, you've also got to learn how to deal with squatters. There's a unique thing kind of started happening about, I would say 5 or 7 years ago with Green Sheet. people started advertising your property for sale and taking on your identity, and they'd get the lockbox code from you or whatever, and then they would give that to other people, and then they would collect a deposit, and they would collect rent from those people, and they'd be moving in your house, and then next thing you know, you've got a squatter, and the police are it's very hard to get the police to come out there and remove those people from your house, because they're saying, look, they got the key. You obviously gave them the key. This is a civil matter. And they typically just, wash their hands of it. Next thing you know, you're going through a 30 to 60-day eviction process. So we want to be very careful how we control access to the properties. We want to become knowledgeable as investors how to handle squatters, because those are our leads in the future. That's one source of leads in the future. So that was a great question. We had
I'd like to jump in just a second, Ray,
yeah.
on this squatter issue. Is it, first of all, when I have my houses, I install an alarm system in every one of my houses. And Hector with Archangel Alarms, which is our vendor, has been my vendor for the last 15 years. He installs alarm systems in my houses for $500 or $600, and they're not monitored. But I guarantee you, I have the speaker put like outside on a gable, so that the whole neighborhood hears that thing go off when somebody's getting into my house. And then the other thing I do is I put door armor, which is these metal rods that go all the way down the face of the door where the locks are, and then 3-inch screws that go into the butts instead of those 3/4-inch screws, so they go into the framing, through the jamb and the framing, so no one can kick that door in. So I make my houses impossible for a squatter to get into, because they have to break through that door, and if they break a window, the alarm goes off, and it don't stop. It doesn't go for 20 or 30 seconds. It goes. And generally,
one thing, Pat, as a landlord, oftentimes we give access to people to our properties on purpose, and it's part of the business plan. And then also there's other people like that will try to rent your property even though they don't have ownership of it. So sometimes we're letting people in those houses, but there's different squatters come in a lot of different varieties. There's a squatter who literally breaks into your house like what you're talking about, and that squatter's easy to get rid of, because once your alarm goes off and you're notified, you call the police. It's trespassing, and it's usually there's obvious signs that they broke into the house, but they have nothing to show that they have a right to be in the house. And in those cases, the police will normally get rid of them. If it's a deal where you actually gave them permission, like you gave them the key to the lockbox, now you're getting in the gray zone. And as an investor, there's certain strategies we want to deal with, but we're not going to go show every one of our houses to everybody. If they're qualified, we usually give them access to the property.
Well, that's the thing, is that, because you've been doing this a long time, and you have property in Orange and Beaumont, Arkansas, you have property everywhere, right? And, but a lot of guys only have 12 or 13 houses in Houston. And one of my clients that, we're doing that rehab on that fire job for, he has 13 rent houses. And what he learned is that he quit handling the renters. In other words, show them the house. He has an agent that shows the house. Well, what happens, he said, is that he found that when he leased the house, then they felt like they had a relationship with him, and that's where they had all the problems, because then they didn't want to pay their rent, acting like he was their friend, and now he's not. And so when he didn't collect the rent, the first thing he does, he gets the management company to file the 3 or 5 day notice, and then they start the eviction process right away.
Typically, it's a 3-day notice. Now, you can do even a 1-day notice if it's in your lease to do a 1-day notice. But you can't. One of the lessons we teach as property managers, even if you're managing the property, you cannot. You have to have the right to be able to ask the people to leave those houses, and you can't. It is a business. And people try to be your friends, and then they try to figure out how not to pay you. And so, and so now, and really, I should be nicer than that, because 9 out of 10 people do exactly what they're promising they're going to do. And as a property manager, we want to always be, in the eyes of our relationship with our tenant, a property manager, not an owner.
Right.
And so there's a couple strategies we use to do that. But one way is to get a professional property manager. We don't recommend getting property managers for people that have 10 or 15 doors, just because they need to learn the business.
Right.
And then they can hire a good property manager. But there's property managers out there that make all the money, and the landlord doesn't, and the owner doesn't make any money. So we're going to be pretty controlling as far as what's spent, how much money is spent. We want to be on top of it in the beginning. And then like what we did in-house, we decided in-house that we were going to pick up our game and be property managers in-house and manage on all our own properties. Sharon does the same thing. They're operating 600 doors, which is more than us. They're operating 600 doors, and they manage in-house because, the margins are there. They can control the outcomes better. They can stay on top of things better. But that's not to say you can't hire a property manager that can do a great job for you. It's just we want to, I think as an investor, you want to learn how to optimize your income. You want to learn how that works. And then as you grow, then you can bring a property manager.
Well, and this guy's still an electrical engineer, so he has an RJ too, and it's a regular job. Plus he has the rent houses. And at some point, he'll probably, at another 2 or 3 or 5 rent houses, the RJ will probably go away. And this is all he'll do, because he's getting older and he's smarter and he's been doing this a long time. And then he can do. See, the thing about you right now is you built this team because you've been doing this for 38 years,
Right.
And so you have all these experiences that you've had to learn and develop. And I'm just saying, if you're new in this business and you have a full-time job, you may want to do it like my client Hans and have someone to handle this for you, so that part of it is kind of off your plate while you learn,
Right.
And because you've gone through all these ups and downs, and more now than almost anybody in this business.
Well, there's a lot to learn, and it's an ever-changing game. We found out the other day that we're unfortunately doing eviction, and we can't even get into court for 60 days. It's like, what's up with that? And so it's a very challenging time for us right now, and we really don't like the eviction process. We've been over backwards. We do everything we can because life happens, and a lot of good people have bad things happen to them. So we do work hard to make it work for our customers, and there's a lot of strategies out there. I love the example you gave with this guy that has 10 or 12 rentals. Do you realize that his net worth, if he has 12 rentals, his net worth probably went up $400,000 last year?
Yeah.
Just from appreciation. In fact, that's one of the questions somebody asked is like, how do you buy for appreciation? And it's actually not as complicated as there's 2 parts to that answer. One is you can't guarantee it, but 2, you can definitely have a strategy for buying for appreciation. And right now, with the low cost of money, if you're not out there getting 4 or 5 rentals, you're 4 or 5 rentals away from increasing your net worth $500,000 to $1 million. And it's like, why aren't people doing that? Why aren't they? And it's what you do today that pays off in 4 years, pays off in 5 years like you wouldn't believe. And there's some real aggressive strategies we can use because to generate cash flow instead of equity. But I'm not into cash flow right now. In my life, I'm into equity. And so that's where I really, really am hustling to work on those kinds of equity deals. But if a person's into cash flow, there's other strategies we get. Now, sometimes we have to sacrifice cash flow for appreciation. In other words, we can get really high cash flowing deals, but it's hard to get high cash flowing deals that are going to give you the appreciation that you want. So there tends to be a little bit of a trade-off. But right now, It's time. If you want to buy for appreciation, then you got to buy where people want to live. If you're looking at house, if you're looking at commercial, you've got to buy where people are willing to spend money to have a business. If you're looking for commercial, it depends what kind of commercial it is, because RVs are big, Airbnbs are big, tiny homes are big, mobile home parks are big. I mean, there's just so much that's going on, so many exciting things. But you got to buy where people want to be, or where they want to go.
Well, and you have storage units.
Less than a minute.
Yeah, we have.
How much?
Yeah, we have storage units, and we're now, thanks to a past student who convinced me, and I'm gonna hope he's right on this. But I mean, we're looking at his numbers. We're about to bring 5 Airbnbs online, and it's not like your mother's Airbnb. I mean, we're really thinking of this as a business. We're thinking of how to scale it. We're thinking about what. Just getting back to like that question is buying for appreciation.
Let's talk about our phone real quick before we run out of time, Ray.
Okay. Well, we do have a bus property tour, a bus tour coming up on December 4th. It's an all-day event. You'll be.
Where do you get that information at, Ray?
MassivePassiveShow.com. MassivePassiveShow.com. It's going to be an all-day event. You and I will be the tour guides. We're going to talk about what makes a good investment, what to do with houses, what not to do with houses. What you don't do is just as important as what you do. We're going to talk about which houses to pick for which exit strategy, how to inspect that house, how to come up with a scope of work, how to figure out what the repairs will be for it. So I'm looking forward to that. I told you, Pat, I'm going to be a few minutes late to that because I have an appointment. But you and James are going to be running it, and
we have the radio show that morning, right?
Yeah, we're going to have to probably get a guest host or something, because we're not going to be able to do the radio show and the bus tour at the same time.
That's right.
And I need all hands on deck for that. So we'll probably get a guest.
Tune in to us and catch our show next week, and go to our website, because you can get all of our YouTube and all our other information. Have a great week.